existential concepts or existential issues is no longer just philosophical, okay? And we're able to conduct research along that lines. And fifthly, it's spiritually oriented, because some people will say spirituality is simply a system of meanings. Some people take that view. Spirituality is nothing more than a system of meaning and values. Okay? So that's one approach. But my own thinking is organized religion and spirituality, they all address the great overlap between the two. They all address the fundamental issues of the human condition. They all address the big five, the 5 questions. Finally, it is a multicultural approach. Why? Because when you ask people what something means to something, okay, huge cultural differences. Okay, the same thing has different meaning between different cultures. The family, for example, for the Oriental family, you just don't divorce so easily. The traditional Oriental family. Family, we have one family for life. Marriage is for life. If we do not like each other, why work things through? We endure. Because we have one life. We are meant to be together. So very different value about family value. Even in coping with problems, the Oriental talk about endurance, patience, accommodation, like water flowing with the situation. They're different concepts. So therefore, when you do counseling, you have to be sensitive to different cultures. So right now, I'm carrying the battle of multiculturalism into empirical psychology. Right now, my friend Sue and Sue were able to successfully introduce multiculturalism into counseling and therapy. But experimental psychology, they're still very resistant. So I'm trying to break into that. Okay, now here is some basic approaches. The first approach to therapy is the disease model, the medical model. Okay, it says that the person is inflicted with a problem, whether addiction or whatever. So we pathologize the person, a sick person. Some of the recovery addicts say, "Oh, I'm sick. I have illness. I have disease. I have mental illness." So if you take the medical approach, see, like my friend Stanton Steele, really got upset by the disease model. So he was very critical. So people, blacklist him. So he'll be here tomorrow, okay? Stanton Steele, people blacklist him. But partially he's right. If you reduce addiction to a disease model, what role does psychology play, right? Now, the second approach is say, well, the person has a problem, so let's focus on the problem. So now it's not the person has a problem now, it's the person has a problem. So there's a change of language, change of paradigm. So we have solution-focused therapy, which is very popular, right? Let's solve the problem. Without dealing with underlying issues of the person, but just focus on the problem. Let's achieve small victories. The third approach is a postmodern narrative therapy. It says, well, the person doesn't have a problem. The person has a problem situation account. So let's externalize the problem. So let's engage in social activism. So society is to blame for addiction or whatever. There's a point there too, right? So the person is not responsible, but it's the environment, it's society, it's capitalism, it's competition, it's the marginalization, it's the depersonalization that create a problem. Now, the existential approach slightly different. The existential approach is also a phenomenological approach. It's saying that, well, we're not saying this person is a problem or this person has a problem. We're saying this person is experiencing a problem. So the focus is on the experiencing person, the person who goes through experience. So therefore, the need is to transform the problem and the person through reinterpreting the experience, through reconstructing the experience, through attributing new meaning to the experience. Because if it's experience, so it involves stream of consciousness, it involves language, it involves memories, right? If it's just just experience, the experience starts somewhere in pictures. The experience starts somewhere in the brain. If you're able to take the experiences from pictures, from diaries, from your life stories, letters, if you take those experiences, then you have the power, see, I'm powering now, that you have the power to reinterpret your experience. The problem is not solved. The problem is simply reinterpreted, reframed, reconstructed. That you have different significance about you as an actor, as an agent. So any question about that, about this distinction? So personally, they all have some point there, they all contribute something. But I think that we need to take all four into account. Okay, what is MCA to what the meaning approach? Now, for the meaning approach, the mission statement is what? Is same as the AA, the restoration of total person to wholeness. It's not abstinence. It's a restoration to wholeness. Remember Jesus' promise in John 14 said, I come to give you life and life more abundantly, right? So Jesus said, I give you life. I give life more abundantly. And also, AA said the same thing. They say, we're not just freeing you from drug, but I want you to move on to live a life of sobriety, a life of happiness, a life of virtue. Okay? So that is a positive orientation. Goals and objectives, okay? So here are a few points. The first point is that the main problem is not the drug, but the person. Now, think about that. Do you know why the war on drug is doomed to failure? Why? Because they put the focus on the drug, right? Not a person who consumes the drug. You can stop alcohol ban, bullying, right? You can stop the drug flow. People will create math lab, they can create. So the war on drug is misguided because the problem is not the drug. Part of the problem, but not the whole problem. The main problem is the person who craves drug. If people start to crave something positive and are interested in drug, then we don't have a drug problem. So therefore, the treatment goal include not only recovery from addiction, but also restoration to fullness of life. The recovery process needs to move from healing of brokenness to personal transformation and full integration into society. Now here we talk about, again, a larger vision. No man is an island, right? So you're not going to be very successful if your only task is to get a person stop taking drugs. You have to not only transform how the person to undergo some transformation, but he has to be integrated into a larger society, larger group. So without a healing community supporting him, he's not going to go very far alone. we have half houses, right? But half houses are half measures. But eventually, we have to prepare people to move into some kind of community that provides support. Now, this, like people talk about downtown East Side. See, you cannot rule out the problem in Vancouver downtown East Side unless you have to transform the community, inject new lives into the place. That's the new apartment condo. It's a good idea, okay? You have to inject healthy life, new life in the community, new business, new housing, new jobs. You have to change the community in order to solve drug problem. That's why the four-pillar approach is not going to work. The four-pillar approach about law enforcement, it's not going to work. Somebody drive the drug addict to Coquitlam to other places. So you have to change. So not only change the person, but there has to be social change. There has to be the poverty has to be rooted out. Poverty, dislocation. There's a lot of social housing problem, employment problems, discrimination. There are all social issues need to be tackled along with personal issues. So it's a much broader thing. So here again, I agree with my friend Ken Hart that complete abstinence is likely the outcome of complete restoration. Your life, if you begin to live a life of sobriety, automatically you have abstain from drug, right? So our job is to facilitate recovery, is to facilitate kind of quest for meaning and discovery of life purpose. Okay? So it emphasizes purpose action, but purpose-driven action. Okay? So these are some of the treatment goals. Okay? So any question?
There should be a very small number of clients for whom this is not quite worth some truly sociopathic people helping them simply to realize that drugs and alcohol are ruining their selfish life. It's not. It's all the people, even must be careful not to think everybody's going to jump into the charity example of the community. It's truly completely selfish.
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing. I'm getting old.
There's some other people for whom this doesn't work, and those are truly, whatever the term is, sociopathic or lack of a conscience, for whom if you can point out the logic of them quitting alcohol and drugs, that their life's going to get better, they may not want to join a 12-step or 16-step or 27-step group. They may simply want to become adaptive sociopaths.
Oh, yeah. So let's put it this way. Every approach is best for some clients. Yeah. Every approach, every approach is best for some clients. Now, this approach will be best for people who are really struggling trying to find some reason for living. They reach the end of the rope. The alternative is killing themselves. Right? They're really struggling to find something to grab on, to find some reason to get well. So that's why I say in my welcome here, I say everyone needs two epiphany. The first epiphany is a rock bottom epiphany. The rock bottom epiphany is a sudden awareness that if they do not change, if they do not seek help, they are going to die. That is an inevitable outcome. That's how they seek help, right? The behavior they seek help. The first epiphany. The second epiphany, I call a new life epiphany. There's somewhere along the way, in the process of recovery, all of a sudden, a light bulb turns turns on. Something clicked in their head. They have a flutter vision. I see it. This is what I really want in my life. This is what I want to do with my life. They might not succeed, okay, but there is a revelation that there's a possibility for a new future, right? So you need to have some kind of epiphany of the possibility for a new life, whether through conversion, through joining AA. I found it. I know that if I follow this path, my life will be changed. So the Millennium Center Counseling really trying to help you to facilitate the discovery of the second epiphany, so that everyone can discover something new for their future. Everyone can regain the center. So when you are stressed, you lose your center, you lose balance, you lose direction. But the new life epiphany say, it's possible for me to regain my center, regain my balance, rediscover my direction, and to rewrite my life story, to reconstruct my future, to make something of my life, to restore my relationship with my wife, to get reconciled with my friends whom I've hurt. So this hope, right? The hope for a new life. And then you follow up a purpose-oriented action. So you start with hope and purpose, and then follow with action. Right? So there's a lot of similarity there, right? So we should talk, okay? We should put together ideas. And Judy, we should talk too, right? It's the 3 R's. Recovering from addiction, that is the abstinent part. Resolving underlying issues, which step is that? Dealing with psychological issues of anger and frustration, and recovering purpose and passion for living. That's the new life epiphany. So the first part it mainly results from the rock bottom epiphany. The third part is the new life epiphany. The second part is simply the process of working through. Okay? When working through the issues, you discover that, it's possible for me to change. Change is possible. Do you know what makes therapy effective? The many variables, but hope. The most powerful, the factor that comes from most variants is relationship. The second one, hope. The new life epiphany means discovery of hope. Once they latch on hope, whether it's tragic hope or creative hope, once they latch on hope, then they're more likely to get well. Without hope, nothing, you don't go very far. Oh, it's too long. Oh. Well, basically, it's just seven pillars. It's holistic, right? Because we know that human beings are psycho, bio, social, spiritual beings. That's what it is, right? And most hospitals, right, by the holistic approach, not just physical. The second thing is integrative. So it's not just solution focus, or it's not just motivating interview. It's not just narrative. Integrating approaches depend on personal needs, okay? But revolving around the concept of the need for meaning. You take different approaches, but always revolve people's primary need for meaning, content meaning, and spiritual meaning, or external meaning. Everybody needs content meaning to understand what's happening, and existential spiritual meaning for happiness. Yeah.